Welcome to our channel. We're so excited to share today's story with you. Before we dive in, we'd love to know where in the world you're watching from. Drop a comment below and tell us. It's always amazing to see how far our stories travel. And if you haven't already, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss tomorrow's special tale. We've got more exciting stories coming your way, and we can't wait to share them with you. Now, sit back, relax, and let's jump into today's adventure. When tradition meets emotion, the secret connection between a tourist and a royal guard. Samantha Miller had lived in London for nearly a year, but despite walking past Buckingham Palace almost every morning, it had always been just another landmark in her daily routine. That all changed one crisp autumn morning. As she walked by, she suddenly felt an impulse, something small yet significant. She lifted her hand and waved at one of the royal guards stationed at the gates. The guard, tall and immovable, didn't flinch, his gaze fixed straight ahead, as was his duty. Samantha smiled. It was a brief, seemingly inconsequential moment, but there was something undeniably comforting about it. For the first time, she felt a strange connection to him, even though he hadn't acknowledged her. It was the stillness, the discipline, and the quiet presence he held that somehow made her feel less alone. The world around her was always changing, the seasons, the people, the noise of the city. But here, with this small act, something constant remained. She wasn't expecting a reaction. It was just a silent gesture. But in that brief moment, a feeling of shared connection passed between them. It became something she looked forward to, something that grounded her amidst her busy life. The next day, she did it again, and the day after that. Each morning, as she walked past the gates of Buckingham Palace, she would wave at the same guard, who never moved, never reacted, but was always there. Her friends found it amusing when she told them about her new tradition. Grace, her roommate, would laugh and tease her. "You do realize they're not allowed to respond, right?" she would say, sipping her coffee. "I know," Samantha would reply, her fingers curling around her mug, "but it's just something about it. It's like a reminder that behind that uniform there's a person, someone who's there every day, standing still, like me, in the middle of all the chaos." It wasn't much, but it was enough. It was the silent exchange, the unspoken acknowledgement, that made Samantha feel a little less like she was walking through life on her own. As the days turned into weeks, this small act became a daily ritual that she relied on. And for the first time, she wondered, was the guard too noticing her? As the weeks went by, Samantha's small morning ritual at Buckingham Palace began to evolve into something more significant. At first, it was just a casual wave, a simple acknowledgement of the royal guard standing stoically at his post. But soon, Samantha found herself looking forward to it every day. There was something comforting about it, the routine, the stability, in a city that never seemed to stop changing. The world moved around her, but for that brief moment, she felt anchored, as though this small exchange was a constant in the midst of the chaos. It wasn't just the routine itself that brought her comfort, though. She began to notice subtle changes in the guard's behavior, one so small that she might have easily dismissed them if she hadn't been paying attention. The first time she noticed it, she wasn't sure if it was her imagination. As she passed by, his posture seemed to shift slightly, almost imperceptibly. His stance, once perfectly rigid, seemed just a bit less stiff, his grip on his rifle tightening ever so slightly as she approached. It was so subtle, so fleeting, that for a moment she questioned whether she had imagined it. But the next day, it happened again. This time, as she waved, she could have sworn she saw his eyes flicker for just a second. He didn't turn to look at her, of course. He remained as still and impassive as ever. But something in his posture shifted, something in the way he carried himself, as if he had become aware of her presence. That realization, however small, left her with an inexplicable sense of warmth. Was it possible that after all this time, he had noticed her? Had he, too, come to expect their silent exchange every morning? Her heart quickened as the thought took hold. Could it be that he had begun to recognize her, just as she had come to recognize him? It seemed like such a silly thought, but the more it lingered, the more she felt a connection, a bond, however strange, with the man who never spoke a word. For Samantha, the guard had become more than just a soldier standing at attention. He had become a quiet part of her routine, a silent presence she could rely on. and with each passing day, the small, unspoken connection between them deepened, leaving her to wonder what, if anything, it truly meant. As the months went by, Samantha couldn't shake the feeling that something was changing between her and the guard. What had started as a simple, quiet routine had grown into something more. She found herself thinking about the guard more than she expected. It wasn't just about the wave anymore, it was about the subtle shifts she had begun to notice. The way his posture seemed to soften ever so slightly when she passed by, the faintest tension in his grip on his rifle. He hadn't spoken, but each day the connection between them felt deeper, more significant, and Samantha found herself wondering if he, too, had come to expect her presence. She tried not to overthink it, but it became difficult not to. Had he noticed her? Was she just another face in the crowd to him, or was there something more? The idea that he might have recognized her, even in the smallest way, kept her up at night. It seemed absurd. She had never even exchanged words with him, and yet there was this silent bond, this unspoken ritual that had become so important in her daily life. One particularly chilly morning, as she waved at him, something unexpected happened. For a brief moment, Samantha thought she had imagined it. His eyes flickered. Just for an instant, his gaze seemed to shift ever so slightly in her direction. It was subtle, so much so that if she hadn't been paying close attention, she might have missed it. But it was there. The guard had acknowledged her, even if it was in the smallest of ways. Her heart skipped a beat. For a split second, she felt a rush of warmth spread through her chest. It was as if, in that fleeting moment, their silent exchange had been more than just a wave. There was recognition, and somehow it felt like he had seen her. The guard, a figure of stoic discipline, had broken the unspoken rule that they remained invisible. And in that brief instant, it felt like everything had shifted. Samantha smiled softly, the air around her suddenly feeling less cold. She didn't know what to make of it. Was it just her imagination? Or had the guard, too, found comfort in their routine? As she walked away, she couldn't help but feel that, for the first time, the more Samantha thought about that fleeting moment, the brief flicker of acknowledgement in the guard's eyes, the harder it became to ignore the deeper connection she felt. But as the days passed, the feeling lingered, growing stronger with every morning she waved at him. It wasn't just a wave anymore. It was a silent exchange of trust, a ritual that had become an integral part of her life. She had no idea if the guard felt the same way, but she had come to cherish those small moments, those few seconds when they silently acknowledged each other in a world that often felt so unpredictable. But then, just as quickly as it had started, everything seemed to change. One morning, as Samantha approached the palace gates, she lifted her hand in greeting, like she always did. As she did, she noticed something that took her by surprise. This time, the guard's fingers twitched ever so slightly. It wasn't a wave, not an overt acknowledgement, but it was a deliberate movement. A gesture, however small, that seemed to speak volumes. It was as though he was saying goodbye. For a moment, everything seemed to stop. Samantha stood there, frozen, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The guard's fingers had moved, just the slightest motion, but it felt monumental. She knew it wasn't a sign of deep affection or anything beyond a simple acknowledgement, but somehow it felt like a farewell. Her heart raced, and her mind reeled. Why today? Why now? She turned away, the weight of the gesture settling heavily in her chest. She couldn't shake the feeling that this small, seemingly insignificant moment meant something more than she could comprehend. Maybe it was because, just like her, the guard had become part of her routine, her daily life. And now, it felt like that routine was coming to an end. She didn't know what to make of it, but deep down, she knew she was about to leave London, and perhaps this was his way of acknowledging her departure. That evening, as she sat in her flat, her roommate, Grace, noticed the shift in her demeanor. "What's going on?" Grace asked gently, sensing something was off. Samantha hesitated, gathering her thoughts before she spoke softly. "I think he knows I'm leaving," she whispered. Grace frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" Samantha couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just passed between her and the royal guard. That small, subtle gesture, his fingers twitching as if in silent farewell, lingered in her mind for days. It wasn't just the motion itself, it was what it represented. Something had shifted. Her departure from London was inevitable. She had an exciting job offer in Berlin, one she had worked hard for and couldn't pass up. But leaving felt more complicated than she had imagined. It wasn't just the city or the life she had built here. It was the small, consistent ritual of greeting the guard each morning, the shared silence that had somehow come to feel like a connection. On the morning of her departure, Samantha couldn't resist one last visit to Buckingham Palace. The city was still quiet, shrouded in the mist of early morning. Her heart ached with a mix of sadness and nostalgia. She had lived in London long enough to feel like it was home, but now she was saying goodbye to more than just the city. She was saying goodbye to the quiet, comforting ritual that had anchored her through everything. As she walked toward the gates, she hesitated for a moment, standing in front of the guard who had been a constant presence in her life. She raised her hand in a final wave, not expecting any grand gesture, just wanting one last moment of acknowledgement. But then, just as she had hoped, something happened. The guard's fingers shifted just slightly, a movement so subtle it could have been missed by anyone else. To Samantha, though, it was everything. It was his silent way of saying goodbye. For a moment, she stood there, her heart full, her eyes brimming with tears. It was a simple gesture, but to her, it was a farewell, a quiet acknowledgement of everything they had shared. She felt a lump in her throat as she turned and walked away. She didn't know if the guard had truly understood what their daily ritual had meant, but in that fleeting moment, she realized how much it had meant to her. The next day, as she boarded the train to Berlin, Samantha carried the memory of that small gesture with her. It was the final piece of her time in London, a moment that tied up the loose ends of her journey. She didn't know if the guard would ever think of her again, but she would always remember that quiet, unspoken goodbye. In that brief, silent connection, she had found something she hadn't expected, a sense of closure, a sense of peace. We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's story. Do you think there's a deeper meaning behind the small, unspoken moments we share with people, even if they don't seem to notice? Samantha's ritual of waving at the royal guard became so much more than just a daily routine. It became a source of connection in a busy, unpredictable world. What do you think about the idea of silent bonds, those small gestures that go unnoticed by others but can hold so much meaning for us? Have you ever experienced something similar, where a simple act or connection became a source of comfort in your life? Let us know in the comments below. We love hearing your personal stories and reflections. And if you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. We have more inspiring tales to share, and we can't wait to bring you the next one. Your support and interaction means so much to us, and we're excited to keep this conversation going. Thanks for being part of our community.